Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. 23 years had passed since that terrible day. He could still remember every word that was spoken, every face that looked down at humanity with disgust, every vote that sealed their fate. The day started like any other. Ambassador Linda Hayes walked into the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. She wore her best uniform. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. She had been fighting for humanity for months, trying to make the alien races understand that humans were not monsters. The hall was huge. 12 different alien species sat in a circle. Each one looked different. Some had scales. Others had fur or strange tentacles. But they all had one thing in common. They all hated humans. The Zentari delegate stood up first. His skin was blue, and his eyes were like black holes. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "We have made our decision," he said. "Humanity cannot join the Galactic Council. Your species is too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable." Linda Hayes stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the pain in it. "Please reconsider," she said. "Humans can learn. We can change. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves." The Aquari delegate laughed. It was a cold sound like water freezing. "Your species solves every problem with war," she said. "When you meet something new, you either try to control it or destroy it. This is not the way of civilized beings." "You expand too fast," said the Keth representative. "You ask too many questions. You want to explore places that should be left alone. You do not respect boundaries." One by one, each species spoke against humanity. They listed every war humans had ever fought, every mistake they had ever made, every time they had chosen violence over peace. The Vellani elder was the last to speak. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the hall like a whisper of death. "In all our years of watching your species, we have seen the same pattern. When humans are afraid, they fight. When they are angry, they fight. When they do not understand something, they fight. This is not the way of beings who deserve to walk." Among the stars, the vote was quick. 12 species. 12 votes against humanity. Not one voice spoke in their favor. Linda Hayes stood alone in that great hall. Her shoulders were straight, but Jake could see them shaking. "Then we will make our own way," she said. "Humanity does not need your approval to reach for the stars." The Zentari delegate smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You will try," he said, "but you will fail. Without our technology, without our trade routes, without our guidance, your species will collapse. You will destroy yourselves within a generation. This is the mercy we show you. We could destroy you now. Instead, we will let you do it to yourselves." That was when they built the barrier, a wall of energy that surrounded all human space. Earth and its 37 colonies were cut off from the rest of the galaxy. No ships could get in or out. No messages could be sent. Humanity was alone. Many people thought it was the end. The news channels on Earth talked about nothing else for months. Some said humanity should surrender. Others said they should find a way to break through the barrier and fight. But most people just felt lost. Jake Morrison was a young captain. Then he commanded a small patrol ship near the edge of human space. He watched the barrier go up. He saw the last alien traders leave human space forever. He felt the loneliness that settled over humanity like a cold blanket. But something strange happened. Instead of giving up, humans got angry. Instead of collapsing, they got stronger. Dr. Peter Kim was one of the first to realize what they had to do. He was a scientist who had studied alien technology for years. When the barrier went up, he gathered every piece of alien equipment he could find. He took it apart piece by piece. He studied how it worked. He learned its secrets. They think we cannot survive without them, he told the emergency council. They think we are too stupid to understand their science. They are wrong. Maria Santos was an engineer who worked on the colony ships. When the alien supply lines were cut off, she had to find new ways to build things. She could not get the special metals that alien traders sold. She could not use the power sources that alien technology required. So she made new ones. She mixed different elements together in ways that had never been tried. She built engines that ran on solar wind and cosmic radiation. She created materials that were stronger than anything the aliens had ever made. And she did it all with things that could be found in any human star system. Commander Ryan Foster was an explorer. Before the barrier, he had been limited to the safe trade routes that the aliens allowed. But when humanity was cut off, those rules no longer mattered. He took his ship into regions of space that had warning beacons around them, places where the aliens said no one should go. He found wonders that the aliens had kept hidden, planets with new forms of life, asteroid fields full of rare minerals, ancient ruins that held technologies the Council had forbidden anyone to study. And he found that space was much bigger and stranger than the aliens had ever admitted. Years passed. The children who had been born during the exile grew up knowing that humanity stood alone. They did not learn alien languages. They did not study alien history. Instead, they learned to be human in ways their parents never could. They learned to fix things instead of buying new ones. They learned to explore instead of following maps. They learned to fight with whatever they had instead of waiting for better weapons. They learned to trust each other because there was no one else to trust. Captain Susan Rodriguez had been a young lieutenant on that day 23 years ago. She had watched the vote. She had seen humanity cast out like criminals. Now she commanded her own ship. Her crew was made up of people who had never known any life except the one behind the barrier. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like?" she asked Jake during one of their rare meetings, "if they had let us join?" Jake looked out at the human fleet that surrounded them. Ships built with human hands and human minds. Crews that had learned to solve problems that would have made the aliens give up. "No," he said, "I think they did us a favor. We are stronger now than we ever would have been as their pets." Neither of them knew that soon the aliens would realize the same thing, but for very different reasons. Captain Lisa Turner was having a normal day when everything changed. Her ship, the UES Pathfinder, was on a routine patrol near the edge of human space. She was checking the readings from their new sensors when something made her stop and look. Twice the numbers on her screen did not make sense. There was something out there in the dark space between galaxies. Something big. Something that should not exist. "Bobby, come look at this," she called to her science officer. Bobby Chun was young but smart. If anyone could figure out what she was seeing, it was him. Bobby walked over and looked at the screen. His face went pale. "Captain, this cannot be." "Right," he said. "These readings show objects the size of small moons. But they are moving, and they are not made of normal matter." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. During the 23 years of exile, human science had grown in ways the aliens never expected. Their sensors could see things that alien technology missed. Their computers could process information that alien minds could not understand. How many? She asked. Bobby worked at his console for several minutes. When he looked up, his hands were shaking. "Hundreds," he said. "Maybe thousands. They are all moving toward our galaxy. And Captain, they are not coming slowly. At their current speed, they will reach the outer rim in less than 2 years." Lisa knew she had to report this immediately, but first she needed to know more. She ordered her crew to watch the objects for 3 days. They took measurements. They recorded everything they could see. And what they found made her blood run cold. The objects were alive. Not alive like animals or plants, but alive in a way that was completely alien. They moved with purpose. They changed direction without reason. And sometimes they seemed to notice when human ships were watching them. On the third day, one of the objects suddenly changed course. It started moving directly toward the Pathfinder. "Get us out of here," Lisa ordered. "Maximum speed." Her ship jumped into hyperspace, just as strange energy beams shot through the space where they had been. Whatever those things were, they did. Not want to be watched. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Chancellor Veltar was having problems of his own. The Zentari leader was in his office on Nexus Prime when the first reports came in. A colony on the outer rim had stopped responding to messages. At first, he was not worried. Communications sometimes failed. Equipment broke down. There were many simple reasons why a colony might go silent for a few days. But then more colonies stopped responding. 3, then 5, then 10. All of them on the outer rim. All of them in the same general area of space. Dr. Zephron of the Aquari was the Council's best scientist. When Veltar called him to investigate, he took the best survey ship in the fleet and headed for the silent colonies. What he found there would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. The first colony he visited was on a planet called Kepler 7. It had been home to 2 million Keth farmers and their families. The colony had been there for over 100 years. It was peaceful and prosperous. Now it was empty. Not destroyed, not burned, not bombed. Just empty. Dr. Zephron landed his ship and walked through the colony with his team. The buildings were still standing. The machines were still running. Food was still on the tables as if people had just gotten up and walked away. But there were no people. No bodies. No signs of struggle. No evidence of what had happened. The only thing that was different were the crystals. Strange, dark crystals that grew from the ground like twisted trees. They pulsed with a faint light that hurt to look at. When Dr. Zephron's team tried to take samples, their equipment stopped working. "It is as if all the life was simply removed," Dr. Zephron reported back to the Council. "Not killed, not destroyed, but taken away completely." The second colony was the same, and the third, and the fourth. Every world they visited was empty except for the strange crystals. Dr. Zephron was a brilliant scientist. He had studied the mysteries of the universe for over 200 years. But he had never seen anything like this. The crystals seemed to exist partly in normal space and partly in dimensions that his instruments could not measure. What could do this? Chancellor Veltar asked during an emergency council meeting. "I do not know," Dr. Zephron admitted. "Our sensors can barely detect these crystals. Our weapons have no effect on them. Whatever created them is beyond our understanding." The council members looked at each other with growing fear. For 1,000 years, they had been the masters of the galaxy. Their technology was advanced. Their fleets were powerful. Their knowledge was vast. But now they faced something that made them feel small and helpless. The Vellani elder spoke first. His voice was even quieter than usual. "We must increase patrols," he said. "We must find whatever is doing this and stop it." But their patrols found nothing. The enemy, whatever it was, struck without warning and left no trace except empty worlds and those terrible crystals. More colonies went silent. Survey ships sent to investigate disappeared completely. The Council's most advanced sensors could not track the attackers. Their most powerful weapons could not hurt them. Fear began to spread through Council space. Trade routes were abandoned. Colonies were evacuated. The outer rim became a place of ghosts and shadows. In his private office, Chancellor Veltar stared at the reports piling up on his desk. 15 worlds were gone. 3 survey ships had vanished. The enemy was moving deeper into Council space, and they had no way to stop it. For the first time in his life, the proud Centauri leader felt truly afraid. His people had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They had always believed they were the strongest, the smartest, the most advanced beings in the universe. Now something had come from the dark spaces between stars. Something that treated their mighty civilization like insects to be swept away. "What are we going to do?" asked his aide, a young Centauri named Colvin. Veltar looked out his window at the city below. Millions of beings lived on Nexus Prime, citizens of 12 different species who had built their lives under the protection of the Council. They trusted their leaders to keep them safe, but how could he protect them from an enemy he could not see, could not understand, and could not fight? "I do not know," he said quietly. "I honestly do not know." In the darkness between galaxies, ancient minds that had slept for 10 million years were finally waking up. The Devourers were hungry, and the galaxy looked very tasty indeed. Admiral Kate Nelson was watching her pilots practice combat maneuvers when the emergency signal came through. The sound was something she had not heard in 23 years. It was the old diplomatic channel that connected human space to the Galactic Council. For a moment, she thought it was a mistake. The Council had cut all ties with humanity. They had made it very clear that humans were not welcome in their perfect galaxy. So why would they be calling now? "Ma'am, we have an incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Tom Brady from the communications station. "It's coming through the old Council emergency channel." Kate felt her heart start beating faster. Nothing good ever came through emergency channels. "Put it on screen," she ordered. The face that appeared was one she recognized from old history. Books. Chancellor Veltar of the Centauri. The same alien who had voted to exile humanity all those years ago. But he looked different now. Older, tired, afraid. "Humanity," he began, and his voice was shaking. "We need your help. Our outer systems are under attack by an unknown enemy. Billions of our people are dead. We may have been wrong about your species." Kate almost laughed. Almost. But the fear in the alien's voice was real. And if the proud Centauri were asking humans for help, things must be very bad indeed. The message continued for several minutes. Veltar described the Devourer attacks. He showed images of empty worlds and strange crystals. He admitted that Council weapons could not hurt the enemy. Their sensors could barely see them. Their fleets had been destroyed like toys. 37 of our worlds have fallen, he said. We have lost contact with hundreds of ships. Our greatest minds cannot understand what we are fighting. We are facing extinction, and we have nowhere else to turn. When the message ended, Kate sat in silence for a long moment. Her bridge crew was staring at her, waiting for orders. But she did not know what to say. Finally, she spoke. "Send a copy of this transmission to Earth immediately. Mark it as highest priority. Then get me a secure line to President Wright." While she waited for the connection, Kate thought about the irony of the situation. The aliens had called humans too violent, too dangerous, too aggressive. Now those same qualities might be the only thing that could save them. President Helen Wright was in a meeting with her cabinet when the call came through. When she saw the transmission from Chancellor Veltar, she immediately called for an emergency session of the Human Colonial Council. The debate that followed was fierce. The council chamber on Earth was filled with angry voices. Some wanted to help the aliens. Others wanted to let them face their fate alone. Senator Bill Crawford was the loudest voice against helping. He stood up and pointed at the screen, showing Veltar's message. "They threw us out like garbage," he said. "They called us animals. They said we would destroy ourselves within a generation. And now they come crawling back because they need us to fight their war?" Many others agreed with him. The pain of exile was still fresh even after 23 years. Humans had built their own civilization, but they had not forgotten the insult. But Dr. Amy Foster, the president's science advisor, saw things differently. She had studied the data that came with Valtar's message. She understood what the Devourers were and what they could do. These creatures will not stop with council space, she said. Look at the data. They consume life itself. They turn entire worlds into feeding grounds. If we let them destroy the council, they will come for us next. And when they do, we will be alone. Colonel Dan Parker, the head of human military intelligence, agreed. He had spent years studying alien tactics and technology. He knew their strengths and weaknesses. The council species are not warriors, he said. They have lived in peace for so long that they have forgotten how to fight a real war. Their tactics are predictable. Their weapons are designed for show, not killing. Against an enemy like this, they are helpless. But we are not, added General Lucy Stone. Our people have been fighting for survival for 23 years. Every human colony knows how to defend itself. Every human ship is built for war. We think like predators, because we had to become predators to survive. President Wright listened to the debate for hours. She heard arguments from both sides. She understood the anger and the pain, but she also understood the threat. Finally, she called for a vote. The question was simple. Should humanity help the Galactic Council fight the Devourers? The vote was close, very close. But in the end, the practical voices won over the angry ones. Humanity would help, but they would do it on their own terms. We will not simply rush to their rescue, President Wright announced to the Council. We are not their attack dogs. We are an independent human nation, and we will act like one. The terms she laid out were clear. Humanity would provide military assistance against the Devourers. But in return, the energy barrier around human space would be removed permanently. Human ships would have full access to all galactic trade routes, and humans would have an equal voice in any decisions about how to fight the war. Most importantly, after the war was over, the Galactic Council would be restructured. No more would the older species look down on the younger ones. No more would peaceful species be valued over warrior species. The galaxy needed both types to survive. Admiral Nelson was chosen to deliver humanity's answer to Chancellor Valtar. She took her fastest ship and headed for the edge of human space, where the barrier still glowed with alien energy. When she arrived, she found a Centauri diplomatic ship waiting for her. It was damaged and looked like it had been through several battles. The aliens were not even bothering to hide their desperation anymore. The meeting took place in neutral space, with both ships keeping their weapons powered down. Chancellor Valtar looked even worse in person than he had in the transmission. His blue skin was pale, and his black eyes were filled with exhaustion. You will help us? He asked without any of the formal diplomatic language that aliens usually used. We will help you, Kate replied, but not because we have forgiven you for what you did to us. We will help because it is the smart thing to do. These Devourers are a threat to all life, including human life. She handed him a data pad containing humanity's terms. As he read them, she could see the struggle in his face. The proud Centauri did not want to accept that humans were now their equals. But he had no choice. Agreed, he said finally. When? Can your forces be ready? Kate smiled. It was not a nice smile. Admiral, we have been ready for 23 years. The question is, are you ready for the way humans fight wars? The die was cast. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what they had learned during their years of exile. And the Devourers were about to learn why the Galactic Council had been afraid of humans in the first place. Captain Steve Martinez had never seen anything like it. The used Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. The great Council fleet was spread across space like broken toys. Ships that had once been the pride of 12 different species now drifted helplessly with their hulls torn open. Some were completely dark. Others flickered with failing emergency lights. A few were still trying to fight, but their weapons seemed to have no effect on the enemy, and the enemy was everywhere. The Devourers looked like living shadows mixed with starlight. They moved through space without ships, their bodies shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Some were as small as fighters. Others were as big as battleships. All of them radiated a cold hunger that made Steve's skin crawl. "My God," whispered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Jenny Walsh. "How many of them are there?" Steve did not answer. He was too busy watching a Devourer wrap itself around a Centauri cruiser. The alien ship's hull began to glow with the same dark light as the crystals they had seen on dead worlds. Within minutes, the entire crew was gone, consumed by the creature's hunger. "All human ships, this is Admiral Morrison," came a voice over the com. "Form up on my position. We are going to show these things how humans fight." The human fleet was smaller than what remained of the Council forces. Only 50 ships compared to their hundreds. But every human vessel had been built for war. Every crew had trained for combat since childhood. Every captain knew that sometimes the only way to survive was to attack Captain Rachel. Moore commanded the destroyer U.E.'s Revenge. She had been studying the Devourer attack patterns for the past hour, and she thought she saw a weakness. "They move in straight lines," she told her crew. "They are used to fighting enemies who follow predictable patterns. But we do not fight that way." Her ship suddenly broke formation and dove toward a group of Devourers. The alien creatures turned to follow her just as she had hoped. But instead of running away, she led them straight into an ambush. Lieutenant Colonel Tim Jackson was waiting with his Marine assault ships. As the Devourers chased Rachel's destroyer, they flew right into his trap. Human Marines in armored suits launched from hidden positions, using personal jetpacks to board the energy beings directly. The Devourers had never faced anything like this. For millions of years, they had consumed civilizations from a distance. They had never had to fight enemies who would jump onto their backs and attack them with hand weapons. Tim's Marines carried weapons that had been designed during humanity's isolation. They were not elegant like Council technology. They were rough, brutal, and effective. Most importantly, they could be modified quickly as the battle changed. "Target their energy cores," Tim shouted over the radio as his Marines swarmed over a Devourer the size of a city bus. "Do not let them focus their power." The Marine attack worked, but it was Dr. Nancy Clark who made the real breakthrough. She was working frantically in her lab aboard the command ship, studying the energy readings from the battle. As a quantum physicist, she understood things about reality that most people could not even imagine. "Admiral Morrison," she called over the com. "I think I know how to hurt them." Nancy had discovered that the Devourers existed in multiple dimensions at once. That was why Council weapons could not harm them. The aliens were trying to hit targets that were only partially there, but human technology was different. During their years of exile, humans had learned to build things that worked, even when they did not understand exactly how. Their weapons were designed to adapt and change as they were used. "The Devourers shift between dimensions," Nancy explained quickly, "but they can only do it at certain frequencies. If we can match those frequencies and change with them, we can actually hit them." She worked with the fleet's weapons officers to modify their targeting systems. It was not easy. The frequencies changed constantly, and human computers had to work overtime to keep up. But it was exactly the kind of challenge that human engineers had been solving for 23 years. The tide of battle began to turn. Human ships that had been struggling to damage the Devourers suddenly found their weapons working. The creatures that had seemed invincible began to fall back. Captain Martinez watched as his ship's main guns finally locked onto a Devourer that had been terrorizing a group of council vessels. The energy beam struck true, and the creature dissolved into sparkling dust. "Got you," he whispered, but the humans were not finished. Admiral Morrison had studied every battle report from the Devourer attacks. He knew that these creatures were not just random monsters. They were intelligent, organized, and very, very hungry. "All ships, form up for the final assault," he ordered. "We are going to hit their command structure." The human fleet moved as one toward the largest group of Devourers. These were the biggest creatures, the ones that seemed to be directing the others. Council forces had tried to attack them before, but they had always been driven back. Humans did not retreat. They charged. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships dove between the massive Devourers like angry hornets, striking again and again. Marines boarded creatures the size of small moons. Weapons that had been built in secret during the exile finally showed what they could do. Captain Lisa Turner, whose ship had first detected the Devourers, led a squadron of fighters straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Her pilots followed. Attack patterns that made no sense to alien minds, but were perfectly logical to humans who had grown up fighting impossible odds. "Remember," she told her pilots, "these things have been asleep for 10 million years. They are not used to fighting. Enemies who fight back, let's wake them up properly." The human assault was chaos to outside observers. Ships moved in patterns that seemed random. Attacks came from directions that should have been impossible. Tactics changed from moment to moment as individual captains adapted to whatever they faced, but to the humans, it made perfect sense. This was how they had always fought. Not with rigid formations and predictable strategies, but with creativity, adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The Devourers began to retreat. Creatures that had consumed entire civilizations were running away from 50 human ships. But the humans were not done with them yet. "Do not let them escape," Admiral Morrison ordered. "If we let them go, they will just come back stronger. We end this now." The human fleet pursued the fleeing Devourers to the edge of the galaxy. There, in the cold darkness between stars, they fought the final battle. It lasted for 3 days and nights. When it was over, the Devourer threat was ended. The surviving creatures fled back into the void between galaxies, carrying with them a new understanding. A galaxy was no longer defenseless. It had guardians now. Guardians who would follow them into the darkness itself, if necessary. As the human fleet regrouped, Captain Martinez looked around at the alien ships that had survived the battle. They were keeping their distance, watching the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. "I think," he said to his crew, "the galaxy is going to be a very different place from now on." 6 months after the last Devourer disappeared into the void, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the same great hall where humanity had been cast out 23 years ago. But everything was different now. The council chambers on Nexus Prime had been rebuilt after Devourer attacks damaged the station. The new hall was smaller, less grand than before. The 12 species still sat in their circle, but now there was a 13th chair. A chair for humanity. President Helen Wright walked into the hall wearing a simple black uniform. She carried no weapons, but every alien in the room knew that human warships surrounded the station. The same species that had once voted to exile humanity now depended on them for protection. "The Devourer threat is over," President Wright announced to the assembled delegates. "Our combined forces have driven them back into the darkness between galaxies. But the galaxy that emerges from this war will not be the same as the one that entered it. Chancellor Veltar looked older than ever. The proud Zentari leader had aged decades in just 6 months. Watching his mighty civilization saved by the species he had once rejected had broken something inside him. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. President Wright smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned that being right was not always satisfying. "Humanity will not simply take a seat at your council and pretend nothing has changed," she said. "The old system failed. When the galaxy faced its greatest threat, your rigid thinking and predictable tactics were useless. It was human chaos and human violence that saved you all." Dr. Zephron of the Aquari shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The old scientist had spent months studying human tactics and technology. What he had learned frightened him. "Your species fights in ways we do not understand," he said. "You change your plans in the middle of battle. You use weapons that should not work. You take risks that no rational being would consider." "Exactly," President Wright replied. "And that is why you need us. The universe is not a safe place. It is not predictable. It is not civilized. You forgot that during your 1,000 years of peace. We never had the luxury of forgetting." The terms humanity proposed were simple but revolutionary. The Galactic Council would be restructured as a true alliance of equals. No more would the older species look down on the younger ones. No more would peaceful species be valued over warrior species. Military command would be shared between human and alien officers. Human tactics would be taught in every military academy. Most importantly, the exploration of unknown regions would be expanded, not restricted. "We cannot afford to ignore the dark places anymore," President Wright explained. "The devourers came from beyond our galaxy because we never bothered to look for threats outside our borders. That ends now." Some council species resisted the changes. The Velani elder spoke for many when he expressed his concerns. "Your people are too aggressive," he said, "too willing to take risks. What if your exploration brings back something even worse than the devourers?" Admiral Morrison, who had been standing quietly behind the president, stepped forward. "Then we will fight it," he said simply. "That is what we do. That is what we have always done. You can choose to help us, or you can choose to hide behind your barriers again. But we will not stop exploring just because you are afraid." The vote, when it came, was not unanimous like the one 23 years ago. Several species voted against the new arrangements, but enough voted in favor to make the changes official. The galaxy now had new guardians. Captain Susan Rodriguez was chosen to command the first Joint Exploration Fleet. Her ship, the U.E.'s Horizon, carried a mixed crew of humans and aliens working together for the first time in galactic history. The early days were difficult. Human officers had to learn to work with alien crew members who thought very differently than they did. Alien officers had to adapt to human unpredictability and quick decision-making. But it worked. The mixed crews brought together the best of both approaches. Human creativity combined with alien knowledge. Human aggression balanced by alien wisdom. Human courage supported by alien technology. 5 years later, Captain Lisa Turner commanded one of 50 joint exploration vessels pushing into the previously forbidden zones of space. Her crew included members from 8 different species, all working together as they mapped the dark regions beyond the galactic rim. They found wonders that the old council had never imagined. New forms of life that challenged every scientific assumption. Ancient ruins that held technologies beyond anything previously known. And yes, they found dangers too. But now the galaxy was ready for them. Trade flowed freely through hyperspace lanes protected by human-designed patrol ships. Scientific exchange accelerated as human curiosity merged with alien patience. New colonies were established in regions that had been considered too dangerous before. But the biggest change was in the military academies scattered across Council space. Young officers of every species now learned the human art of improvisation. They studied battles where outnumbered human forces had defeated superior enemies through creativity and determination. Admiral Morrison often visited these academies to speak to the students. He would tell them about the early days of human exile, when a small fleet had to defend 37 colonies against whatever the universe threw at them. "The galaxy is not safe," he would tell the young officers. "It never was, and it never will be." The old council tried to make it safe by building laws and following rules. But safety is not something you build. It is something you fight for every single day. One day, a young Zentari cadet asked him a question that made him smile. "Admiral, why are humans so good at fighting impossible battles?" Morrison thought for a moment before answering. "Because we never learned that they were impossible," he said. "When you are fighting for your survival, when you have no choice but to win or die, you discover that impossible is just another word for difficult." Chancellor Veltar, now reduced to governing only his home system, watched the changes from his office on the Zentari homeworld. His species had once ruled the galaxy through diplomacy and ancient tradition. Now they were just another member of an alliance led by beings they had once considered barbarians. His aide, Colven, found him staring out the window one evening. "Do you regret it?" the young Zentari asked. "Casting them out all those years." "Go?" Veltar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I regret that we were too proud to see what they really were," he said. "We called them dangerous because they fought when others would surrender. We called them unpredictable because they refused to follow our rules. We called them violent because they would not accept defeat." He turned away from the window and looked at his aide. "But those are exactly the qualities the galaxy needed. We just could not see it until it was almost too late." In the darkness between galaxies, ancient eyes watched the bright spiral of stars that had once seemed so easy to consume. The devourers would return someday. They always did. But now the galaxy had guardians who would follow them into the void. Itself, the council had cast out humanity for being too dangerous. Now they understood that sometimes being dangerous was the only thing that kept the light alive in a dark universe.